Welcome, everyone. This episode with the very well recommended Jim Grubman, he is joining us today for a very interesting and deep discussion on two topics. The one topic is maybe one of you in the audience have approached this term. What is actually the 70% rule, these three-generation conflict discussion? Rice paddy to rice paddy, clocks to clocks, shirt sleeve to shirt sleeve. What is actually true on this? I would say, on the one hand, yes, it is physics, that is entropy, but is it necessary that we drive these often fear-driven discussions into the family system and make the system unstable and often there is just a very stupid, excuse me for this, stupid discussion and a very disconnected discussion. That's number one. Number two is also we face at this time the greatest wealth transfer in history. These 140 trillion US dollar or 100 trillion, there are different numbers around the air, but nobody talks about these integration issue. And Jim, you have wrote a very brilliant article with Dennis Jaffe together on these acquirers in Inheritors challenge. And this will be our topic. And are we quite convinced that will be an interesting discussion with you? And I would say, let's jump in, Jim.
Let's do it. It's very nice to be here and have a conversation with you, Jan, about this.
That's great. So I will start with a little story, and this story is just very fresh. It's just a couple of weeks ago. I had a very interesting discussion with a family in the UK. They are in the transition. I don't call it succession, because succession itself means something come to end, nothing come to end. It's just in a transition.
Yes.
And the family leader talked to me and said, what is actually the opposite of these three-generation conflict discussion? Is it true? How we can avoid this? And what can we happen as a family that we have it in our own hands to decide when will be this three-generational conflict occur in our family? And he said to me, he raised the question very often and quite openly to say, what about each generation is a generation one? He called it a creator generation. And I will give the ball to you, Jim. What is your perception? I mean, there is no evidence around the world about the 70% rule. On the one hand, entropy is real, that is physics. But what is...
Well, actually, may I
Sure.
interject something there? We have to remember the idea of entropy and physics is not real. It's a metaphor that people have talked about, the entropy of families, and this is physics and whatever. It's important to keep in mind there is no such thing. There's no physical thing in the family of people moving apart. It's a metaphor. It's the idea that over time, family members may go different ways and stuff. So when you say it's physics and it's real, I would just bring us back to remind us that no, actually, it's a model and a metaphor, and we need to remember that it is only that.
Okay, that brings me to the first question. What can we do to help families that they can survive quite successfully over generation? What is the thing?
It's a central question, particularly, if you want to be a good parent, and
Yes.
I believe most people want to be good parents and they want their family to do well. That's the question, which is, we moved from poverty or working class or middle class life, and now we are wealthy in this generation, which means that's G1. There's
Yes.
no getting around it. How do we make sure that this massive change in the family will be adapted to well, so that the family continues to be a good family and do well and people thrive? The shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves and 70% of families fail and stuff dates back to what I have called the Wealth 2.0 era of the last 40 years, including some research in the early 1980s, which has been carried forward inappropriately, including by the people who did the research. They warned against, going beyond the data. And it's become like fact. And, your reference, I did an article several years ago called "There is no 70% rule," where I took a deep dive into pursuing all the literature. I filed citations and then looked to see the original sources and then who cited that, and basically was an archaeologist. And I discovered that there was very little evidence, and it all points back to one study which was blown out of proportion. And even shirt sleeve to shirt sleeve, it's an adage, it has some guidance, but the evidence for all of that. However, to your point about the wealth creator that you were talking with a couple of weeks ago, it has been drilled into so many families, and the anxiety, the normal, natural worry of the first generation and wealth creator of, oh my God, we migrated to the land of wealth.
Yes.
Is this going to turn out badly? Because I really wanted to get here. And
Yes.
I'm really glad that we got here.
Yeah.
But is there a downside? And so the anxiety of wealth creators has been fed by advisors and by these statistics to say, actually, you should be worried because it's all going to fail. And essentially now we say, actually, no, there is no evidence whether it's going to fail or not. And many families do much better than we think. So let me pause there for a
Yes.
second, just
Yes.
summarize that the idea of for a wealth creator in the first generation of a family to be worried that the wealth will harm the family is natural. The problem is it's much more complicated for the solution than what we've been told.
Maybe, and I would like add these discussion what we see quite often in many families, who is actually in which generation.
Yeah,
right?
The naming of the generations and things like that.
I mean, it will be easy if there are only a couple and their children sitting on the table. It's easy. Okay, we are G1 and they are the next G2, maybe.
Yes.
But if the family is growing, it is just not too easy to pick up. Okay, who is actually in which generation? Number one. Number two is what I often observe is when it comes to these, I call it these bridge generation, these second generation.
Yes.
And often also the third generation. By and large, they have no clue what their responsibilities are to build up the house for the family that they can growing over the next generations.
Perhaps.
In some cases, they are prepared, but in many cases, that is just on my experience, they are unprepared, or they are stepping in the shoes of the wealth creator in investing or in an entrepreneur stuff, and they're not working on these family house itself. And what is your view from your experience on these generational discussions in the family? Is this just in a discussion from the past because we are facing, or we are standing on a crossroad? I mean, we are facing in generation of families that are completely different as their parent generation in their behaviors, in their thinking, and also in their interpretation, what is actually wealth, right? And they are not only focused as their parents on preserving the money or preserving the fortune, but also to raising the question, what is our family actually standing for over generations, right? So can you pick up just what is your view on these generational discussions? Is this good or bad? Is it helpful? Is it useful? What is your opinion on this?
Sure. Well, I think My view on it is illuminated by something I talk about at length. And the Dennis and I started with our article on acquirers and inheritors, which is 20 years ago. It was
Yes.
2006. And I expanded in my first book, Strangers in Paradise. And I think one of the important things about that was that I actually went quite deeply into cross-cultural psychology and social anthropology, not looking at wealth, but looking at what happens when people grow up in one culture and they migrate to a new land or a new culture, and the application of that also as a metaphor, but as a pattern. And it really helped clarify my thinking. And in my work with families, it's really been very helpful because, as your patriarch was saying, families often have these homegrown ideas about how to name the generation, the good and bad of G2, G3. Every generation should be a G1 or entrepreneur. And I think it comes from a lack of understanding of the nature of development over time of wealth. The first generation that substantially creates wealth is G1. And I always date it and I ask questions of when did the family move from the economic culture that was existing before to being into some level of the wealth status. It could be 1%, it could be 0.5%, 0.1%, whatever, but into wealth statistically.
Yeah.
That's G1. There's no getting around it. Where people get confused is, the children of those people, they're G2. And the children of those people are G3, and you keep going on. The idea that somehow if a generation or a person in a generation grows the wealth more, or sometimes even regrows the wealth, that somehow the clock restarts, I disagree with. It's not true. Because the idea of they're still, let's say, G3 just grew the wealth. It doesn't change them into G1. It just says they were a G3, they grew up in a wealthy family, maybe the wealth declined, and then they built it back up again. But the original start for that family, for a variety of reasons that we can talk about if you wish, it's like the idea somehow that a G3 cannot grow wealth significantly is not true. Many G3s, I've seen G5s who turbocharged the wealth. It doesn't make them G1, it's a G5 who grew the wealth. People want to believe somehow that if you grow the wealth again, you go back to being a G1, but it's a misconception that inheritors cannot be wealth creators. A G5 is a G5.
Yes. Yes.
And they can grow the wealth or they can not grow the wealth or whatever, but they're still the fifth generation from the original wealth creation.
I will pick up these point what you mentioned, you mentioned these variety of reasons.
Yes.
In my interpretation is that yes, without any question, there's a generation one. This is the generation who have put a lot of effort into make a fortune, right?
Yes.
And the second and third generation and the next generation that are coming are in the position to regenerate the fortune because they are not the creators.
Or enhance it, keep it from a certain point, and then, like I say, turbocharge it.
Right. And what about, my question is, what is the core essence if you are talking about, okay, the G3 or maybe the G5 is regenerating the fortune and is skyrocketed, maybe in different reasons. Why different? Is it just on the one hand, maybe that could be a provocative issue that the evolution of the family system itself to an institution, number one, and number two, and number two is just this is also what I've often criticized, these legacy thinking from the past.
Right.
And that is blocking many families because they are repeating the past over and over and over again, but they're thinking, okay, we have a legacy. But if you're asking, okay, is your legacy planned from the future? No, not by large. It's planned from the past. Could be there's two components to say, let's put these generational discussions behind to say each generation maybe is an entrepreneur generation or creator generation, stuff like that. But the course is set it in the impact what we want to generate over generations, and we build our present from the future, not from the past. Could be this a solution to for more cohesiveness in the family, but also to avoid these often stupid discussions?
It's an interesting point. I think the question is, in some ways, perhaps less about the family, because all families go through periods of peace and calm or stagnation or less focus, less cohesion. And then often there arises in a generation an individual who might have the entrepreneur spark. People say, oh, she's just like her grandfather.
Yes.
Or leadership. In the literature, often Joshua Nacht in the US helped coin the term a family champion, somebody who understands, and that's about leadership, not just entrepreneurship. And so in some families, in G3 or G4, there still may be wealth, they may be comfortable, and they may have been running the business or whatever. But there arises in G4 a dynamic individual who understands entrepreneurship, who has that striving, and who wants to lead the family, sees an opportunity in the business or a new opportunity because maybe the business of the family was from 60 years ago.
Yes.
And somebody sees a new business now. And so lo and behold, they work hard, they grow the money, and their fortune increases. The reason that I still date to they're still G4 is because, as the article on acquirers and inheritors talks about, and Strangers in Paradise, wealth classification is about culture, not money. If you grow up comfortably with wealth, if you have advisors to the family, if you whatever, you're a native of the land of wealth.
Yes.
Whether you're an entrepreneur or not.
Yes.
But sometimes a family that is comfortable produces a person or even marries in somebody, and they have the entrepreneurial spike or they work in the business. And now the family has much more money. They're still G4. They just happen to be entrepreneurial or a leader. And it may or may not have, because of a change in the orientation of the legacy of the family, it may be kind of like the individual in G1 who wanted to get out of where they were and saw an opportunity and pursued it. And now their family, is wealthy.
But there is still a main question in my head.
Sure.
And this question is, yes, through these wealth transfer, we will see growing wealth in families itself on the one hand, and on the other hand, all statistics have proved this, that we will see an increasing count over the next decade of more families with significant wealth. And what I mean by significant wealth, families with more than 100 million or 250 million in assets. And in most cases, these what you called in your book, and it's a brilliant book, and it's clearly recommended, they are strangers into paradise, right? They worked very, very hard, and they're now knocking on the door and say, now we are wealthy, or we are rich, but they are not rich, right? So the point is, from a social economical standpoint, and also culture-wise, and also in regards of tensions in each societies, I mean, no society have any benefit, we in Germany, in the US, or in Asia, stuff like that, if these families with significant wealth, on the middle, they have a lot of power in their hand, that they can change a lot to the good things, but also to bad things, have no benefit if these families are disappear on different matters. It could be divorce or wrong investments or stuff like that. If I put you in a position to say, let's rethink something in regards of the three-generational conflict discussion and stuff like that, what is necessary to start a refresh discussion to help families really to take care of them, that they are survive over many 4, 5, 6, 7 generations, and that they can do good things with their power in their hands? What is necessary in change of the discussions? I mean, in many cases, the discussions what we have today also in many, that's just from the past, 20, 30, 40 years ago. But now that is just my point, we are standing on a crossroad to say, we are facing in a completely different generational type of individuals and families, gender-wise, entrepreneur-wise, age-wise, stuff like that. And also what I often recognize is these individuals, these family members, these wealth creative, they approach often the case, don't give me more content, because on the matter, the content is there. Give me the context, how I can implement this, how we can make this happen. And not only on one event, but give us just an architecture and structure that we can make this happen over generation. It comes often to the point that they say, we have a lot of complexity. Who is actually the one who brings out the complexity of what we have faced in our family? Not make it simple, make it easier to handle. So coming back to the point, what is your holistic view, if we take a look just over the next decade? What should be changed in this regard?
Complicated question.
Let's try to answer the question.
Sure. A couple things. First of all, having been in this business since the late 1990s in the dot-com era,
yes,
which was absolutely transformative in levels of wealth and other things, I have a somewhat more moderate view of less how unprecedented the current environment really is. The original study that was done and the projections of the great wealth transfer were done in 1998, 1999, actually here in Boston. And their projections said that, oh my God, in the year 2010 and 2015, there will be trillions of dollars transferring that will be unprecedented, and society will be forever changed by it. We know how that turned out.
Yes.
The concept of the combination of increasing longevity, people living longer,
yes,
and asset inflation, that what used to be $50 million is now $200 million, and what used to be 200 is now, 900 million. That's just the natural course of wealth creation. Wealth creation has skyrocketed in the last 30 years. And so when I've looked at the statistics, one of the things that I looked at is the numbers are getting bigger. Is the pattern really changing? And my conclusion is actually the pattern of wealth transfer has not changed very much at all. It's still around 1.5% per year. It gets transferred to the next generation. It's just, 1% or 1.5% of a bigger number is a bigger number. And
Yes.
so we're looking at much larger amounts of money transferring now, but it's still about somewhere between 1 and 2% per year. That pattern has not changed. And so the the ways that the wealth is being transferred, most of it still is being transferred in trust. Most of it is still being transferred at the very top of the market. All of those things have not really changed. But what you mentioned has changed, which is the demographics of
Yes.
wealth. Those who are wealthy and the nature of families, there are many more non-traditional families, more women-led businesses and wealth. Um, the diversity of families that have wealth has changed. And that is changing, as you say, the nature of the family's view of wealth.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And so that brings us back to the idea of the result of what I call Wealth 2.0 versus now 3.0 is actually a positive sign that there's a lot more wealth advisors who are hearing about and helping families with the kinds of things that you were mentioning. The idea that family communication is important across time is no longer a novel idea.
Sure.
The idea that you should be doing family meetings, the idea that there should be shared decision making, all of those things are changing families in a positive direction to understand, particularly the idea, for example, of shared decision making as
Yes.
opposed to unilateral decision making.
Yes. Yes.
And so the bottom line is what I feel is going to be useful and what I see actually changing very positively with many families is they're getting much more help from their multi and single family offices around the family issues. They're advocating and want focus on the family, and they're doing techniques and procedures that are known to foster well-being and thriving in the family. And so I think the future bodes very well for more and more families with wealth.
I'm absolutely with you. And what I want to like to add is just, and it is just my perception, and maybe it's helpful just also for the audience. On the number one is just that reflects many discussions with these new generation of families, also these inheritors, G2 and G3, is just they came aware of that wealth itself is not
Not the end point, the be all and end all of
it's
everything. It's not all about the money.
it's also not a factor to distinguish themselves as a family in their community, right?
Mhm.
That's number one. Number two is just these when it comes to the family office itself. I mean, today is not too easy. I mean, you can have 1 billion or 500 million, and you say, "Yeah, I'm the greatest. I have a lot of a fortune in my pocket," and you don't have access to the best of the best investment opportunities. If
Perhaps.
and you have an access to the best of the best investment opportunities if you have just a clear vision and mission as a family, and you can articulate it very clearly. What is your family standing for? Whatever that means, right? And that brings me to the third point is just these I call it just the evolution of the family system itself. It is what I often slowly but surely driven by this new generation to emerge as a family system to an institution.
Mhm.
Not only institution on the matter to become an institution, but also to be a resilient powerhouse, because
Absolutely.
uncertainties
The word resilient is very important there. Yes.
right? But if you want to become resilient, you need a structure, a very strong structure, and you need an institutionalized thinking and approach, but also how do you organize yourself as a family?
Actually, I would add another element that
Yeah.
often is not talked about as much because the nature of life and wealth and how things go across long periods of time is not what structure you have, it's how adaptive
Yes,
that structure is.
absolutely. Yes,
And I have focused a lot on, and I speak about and help families that it is the family, including the family office, that is adaptive,
yes.
that survives, not necessarily the one with the best structure at any given one time.
Very good point.
And
Very,
so resilience and is very much tied to the quality of adaptation and adjustment, and the idea that periodically the family needs to be refreshed, needs to have fresh thinking. Um, and there are various elements of adaptation we can discuss, but a structure can be great at one point, and 15 years later can be what's holding the family back. It's not unlike, I don't know if you like a lobster. A lobster periodically has to molt, has to
yeah,
shed its hard shell
yeah,
in order to grow.
yeah.
And family offices and families have to have that quality of being adaptive. And that's a hard quality for any family.
Yeah, and if you explain this, and it pops up in my head, that comes these adaptability, but also flexibility
Yes,
comes
that's
to
part of
yeah,
adaptation, adaptive ability.
right.
Um, I often talk about, and many people have heard me talk about, something which actually, again, comes from cultural and social psychology because they study this quite a bit. And I talk about the three main elements or questions of adaptation. Number one, what from our heritage and or what we are doing now still serves us well and we should keep. Number two, what from our heritage or what we have been doing no longer serves us that we need to let go of. But importantly, number three, what from our current and future circumstances do we need to learn and take on that will serve us well for the future? What do we keep? What do we let go of? And what do we learn? Families that have conversations and really take that seriously are adaptive because they will constantly keep what's solid, let go of what is not, and build the next level.
That's a great point. And what pops up in my mind was in discussion. Maybe that's an interesting point. I was very surprised. There was a family, and in the first discussion, there was a first argument. It was, don't treat us as a snowflake. I say, great,
Yes.
great. Because the argument was everybody treats us as a snowflake, and yes, we are
Yeah.
using
Oh, yeah.
yeah. But that is not helpful for us if we
No.
want to think over the horizon, right? Great point. Let's make a step over the bridge to once again to these wealth transfer, what we are facing today and maybe over the next couple of years. And what I often recognize is the whole world is talking only and only about the money.
Well,
Maybe,
I would say one thing. Many advisors are talking only about the money because they
yes,
see
yes,
euro signs and dollar signs as, oh, we're going to get a piece of that. So
yes,
many advisors are doing that. Families are talking about it sometimes in a different way of, oh my God, what are we going to do?
absolutely. And I will give you back the question. What I often miss is the question how we can help families navigate through these transfer of wealth. Number one, and number two is each individual, each family member who wants to inherit this kind of fortune, receive something what they don't have created by them own self. I mean, there's money, there's relationship, energy, and stuff like that. Can you give us just also based on your brilliant article on the acquirers in Inheritors issue, what is your advice or guide, what you give families in regards of this challenge? What is the thing, what is the pathway, what families can be followed on this? Because I've
Sure.
never seen anybody else to say, yeah, maybe step number one, step number two. Many think, yeah, make a pause and then let's wait and we'll see. But I would say that is not helpful. I mean, there will be also speed on this wealth transfer itself. Can you give us just your idea and your perspective on this?
But it's funny because it goes back to the very, very old question. And in some ways, the anxiety of G1 really touches on this, which is how much is enough? Yeah, how
Yeah,
much should I give them?
yeah,
And it's funny because, as they say, the goalposts keep moving with that, as again, a result of asset inflation and wealth creation and everything. Um, the idea that, well, don't give your kids more than $20 million if you have 150 million, because otherwise they will turn into trust fund babies and it's terrible and the wealth will crush them and whatever. So the number is 20 million.
yes,
20 million is not that wealthy in the current environment, and certainly in 2035 will be nothing. Um, but again, it goes to the fear of if I give them more than they can handle, it will ruin them. So what's the number? And now we have, and the numbers are changing independently of what we wanted. Okay. Are we going to crush them? And what should we do? Or whatever. The basic principle still applies. Good parenting,
mhm,
and parenting is hard enough in any environment, but
yeah,
parenting with wealth has its own complexities, and good preparation, which go hand in hand. Because if you know my writing and whatever, I often use car analogies. And the idea of, well, my child is at a certain point. What kind of car should I give them? And should it be a fancy BMW? Should it be a Ferrari? Should it be a 10-year-old Honda? What's the right answer for how you give a car to a child? And my answer is always the same, which is, do they know how to drive?
mm,
It's not the car, it's the skill.
right,
I know some, well, actually, I know some young people who would be very capable driving a Formula One car. Okay. And, they know how to drive a Formula One car. And
yes,
if, proverbially speaking, if they were to get one, they would be okay with it. I know some other people who are such terrible drivers, they shouldn't have any car.
yes,
The issue is skill and preparation. It should match what comes to a person. And so it really doesn't make any difference in the great wealth transfer if somebody is inheriting $30 million or $300 million. The question is, are they prepared to handle $300 million? Because if they are, they're going to be okay. So the idea of starting from a young age, good parenting, good preparation, good advisors, good communication, all the things that we have learned in the past 40 years of what makes for success in families over time. If you do those things, the numbers mean nothing because people will be able to handle it.
what is your estimation? How many of these families on this matter, what you have described, is really prepared? What you mentioned, if the
I
family,
have no idea, Jan. I wish I knew. I wish we had real research data with a rigorous design. You're asking a question that unfortunately everybody answers from their subjective anecdotal experience and bias. This is a field where we have really crucial questions like what you just asked, for which we have no data. Everybody has an opinion. I can tell you my opinion, but it doesn't make a difference. We need to have actual real data, and I just hope someday we do.
Is it often also the case that we won't have any clue about this because many advisors can sell their fear-driven based approach?
Absolutely. If you're an advisor and you can flog that fear and say, "Oh my God, did you know 90% of families fail?" Let me tell you, we have a way to prevent that. Let me sell you that. If it turned out actually only 20% of families struggled and 80% did perfectly well, as an advisor, I'm in deep trouble. What am I going to sell to help families do that? I need to change what I do.
Maybe it's quite provocative what I say. I would estimate there's an 80% rule. 80% are unprepared or mediocre prepared, and there are 20% they are well prepared.
Okay.
Maybe, I mean, that is just my learning. It comes often through many areas of life. There's these 80% rule. These
Everybody who has an opinion believes
yeah,
that their opinion is
yeah.
well-founded. That is the nature of
Maybe, maybe, yes, yes. So we are coming to the end on our discussion for today. And let me ask you a final question. I mean, you are a senior guy in this field. If you and we had the opportunity to meet us in 500 years from now, yes, I know that's a long period of time.
Yes. And assuming that the world still exists 500 years from now, but keep going.
Maybe we met us on Mars with a SpaceX rocket
Right.
ship, and we look down of the Earth.
Right.
What is your perception? How will the societies changed or developed? What is the world of the families maybe changed? And what kind of impact do you want to see what these families can have? It's a little bit challenging,
How
but
about if we pull the time horizon to 10 years from now? Because uh, as a scientist, practitioner, researcher with a rigorous mindset, I know the literature that says any prediction beyond about 10 years is complete speculation. There's no foundation
okay,
whatsoever.
let's do it this way.
Going back to in 1999, would they ever have predicted the way the world looks right now, only 25 years later? All predictions would have been on.
Yes.
So let's pull forward in 10 or maybe 15 years. I would say number one, wealth creation will continue. And that's the nature of not just life, but the changes in society. There are many people who say, well, that means more wealth inequality and whatever. That may be, but those things rise and fall. Going back to what we talked about a half an hour ago, the demographics of wealth are changing and will continue to change.
Yes.
There is much more wealth that is global. There is much more wealth in non-Western countries and populations. The amount of wealth in China, and especially India, and the wealth that may be created in Africa is going to look very different than the world in 1999.
Yes.
And so the cultural aspects of wealth, the family aspects, the nature, as you are seeing in Europe now, the nature of significant wealth advisors and institutions in shifting toward more of the human capital factor. I believe that will continue and accelerate,
Yes.
and that there will always be people who think it's all about the money. But the more that proportion grows of people who understand it's about family and preparation and communication, suppose that turned out to be 30% of the population instead of 15%.
Hmm?
It will change the nature of the world. We already are seeing, for example, that philanthropy is changing with the younger generation. So I think socially and culturally, even 15 years from now, maybe 20, um, there may be actually really good advances in wealth and people understanding more how to adapt to wealth.
That's great. And if I can offer you my perspective,
Sure, please do.
is I would say we will see on an increasing speed in a new league of elite families.
Okay.
Why? Because that is also what I've learned through many discussions with families. These old traditional elite families, by and large, at many societies around the globe, have lost the connection to the societies itself.
Okay.
Number two is they are facing often the challenge, what we have discussed previously, these three generational conflict discussions that their kids say, we want to jump out, please give us a chair, and we won't have nothing to do with these old traditional money stuff like that. And it could be not many, but a small proportion can be disappear on these old traditional elite families.
Sure.
What I see also is through these wealth transfer itself, I have seen this on an Italian family. They are in the third generation, and their son have taken over the leadership of the family and say, we want to become a new dynasty, but not structural wise on the Rothschilds and what we have seen over the past. And there is a great risk that we will see subsegments of elite families, because they have a lot of power in their hands, to say, we play on our own rules and we build our own societies. And it comes often back to the question, okay, what kind of advice, what kind of architecture, what kind of adaptive, flexible systems can we provide for these families, that they are not say, all these advisor world is stupid for us, we build our own self. And that is just my prediction. Maybe it's true, maybe we will see it, but that is what I see. But also in regards of the family office environment itself, I mean, many of these new entrepreneur family offices, they talk and say, we won't join these old tables with these old traditional family offices. They talk about things that is not ours, right? And but it comes back to the point to maybe to avoid on some stages these that wealthy sub-segments will be emerge. And that could be also maybe a risk for some societies. Maybe it's a little bit too negative, probably. But I guess there's some truth on this. So I've very enjoyed our discussion, Jim, today. Hopefully you as well.
Yes, absolutely. Good talking with you.
And many thanks for your time today. And yes, I know you are moving in your retirement. It's absolutely. I guess you will drive your Porsche.
Absolutely. Yes.
And many thanks for your time today, and it was a great pleasure.
Well, thank you for inviting me, and it's been a wonderful conversation. And how about we set a date in 15 years and
Yes.
have a good quality single malt
Yeah,
scotch,
absolutely.
and we'll
Let's do
find out how the predictions went.
it. Absolutely. Many thanks.
Okay. Take care.